Tom Dempsey, how would you summarise that match? Because honest to God, we're all out of breath after it. Relief in Wexford, absolute disappointment in Kilkenny, let me add. But you're very relieved down here.
Nicky, it was, we're talking about matches over the last 50 years, but that was the most important match, Nicky. We talk about different games. The one thing I'd have to say, Nicky, and I just want to remark on the honesty of Kilkenny, I'm not saying that they were at their full flight, but they came down in a very nice way to close the lid on the coffin. But I think they're going home saying, well, it's no harm that we're still in. And that's the way Kilkenny people, that's the camaraderie we have with you over the years. I thought Kilkenny hurled very, very well in the first half. For me, I feel that not only is Wexford hurling been saved today, Nicky, but I think Leinster hurling has been saved as well. And it's not to sound arrogant, because we got ourselves into the problems we were in. But today, I think it's a great day for hurling for us. But I think it's not a bad day for hurling overall either.
Can't argue with you at all there. Look, when Kilkenny went into a bit of a lead early on, I could see Wexford people around me kind of in despair. They weren't even biting the nails on their hands anymore. They thought this was going to be terrible. But to credit of Wexford, they came back, and maybe it just dawned on the players that there was a lot of history at stake today. They did not want to be a set of players that went down to the Joe McDonagh, and I think maybe that told a bit in the end.
I think you're right, Nicky, and we're standing here in front of a jersey here with Dave Byrne, Tony Dorn, Willie Murphy, Ned Colfer, men that you would have hurled against over the years. I was brought up on a diet of Nicky Brennan hurling wing back on Johnny Murphy or whatever, and to be honest with you, I loved Wexford and Kilkenny, and Wexford and Kilkenny was hurling for me. Like Munster hurling is great, but that was what I was brought up on. We were looking at probably 12 months now, 24 months of none of that, and really it's not, and you know yourself, it's not easy to keep things going with youngsters, things like that, if we're not being able to exemplify our hurlers in the brightest lot. And I think today, look, it's probably been focused on Wexford. Kilkenny will have another day, but what I was delighted today, we were looking for our leaders today, and I think not for the first time, the Liam Ryans, the Matthew O'Hanlons, the Lee Chin did things today on the field that I was just took my breath away. Liam McGovern, 2 cruciate ligament operations. He fought like a man possessed. And I think Diarmuid O'Keefe, he was just outstanding. And the whole way through, I think those guys led us from the front. And they saw what was at stake, and they didn't want to maybe bow out, some of them, on that note, really.
And I think, as Dara said to me upstairs, you got a fair bit out of your subs. Dunbar hit a great line ball over the bar, followed up with a point. Conor Hirden did well. So subs contributed today, and that's what you want. Because Kilkenny were actually down a long ways, having to bring on a couple of lads before the match, a good few more on the match. So I think it shows the strength of panels in this structure of a championship now.
Absolutely, you have to have a strength of panel, and I think there's 2 things as well that came out of it for me today, Nicky. Sometimes, I don't know if you feel the same, but you're made feel a bit like a dinosaur if you're saying, over the last while, we're listening to these magnificent pundits on television. They're able to tell us that you play the short ball and you work through the lines and you do all that, and you're made feel, I don't know if you feel that we really don't know anything about hurling. Today for me, yesterday with Carlo and Offaly brought back to me, you get that ball into the square and cause panic in the opposition defence for both sides, and it does a lot of damage. And I just thought today and yesterday was a return to the old style hurling, and I think there's a firm place for old style hurling in the game still.
And of course we're hearing a lot about Munster hurling, and of course it's great, but I think Leinster hurling showed today in the 3 matches, they were all tight matches and cracking games between them, and while they wouldn't necessarily have the same crowds as down in Limerick as we're speaking now, nevertheless Leinster hurling is not in as poor a state as people are making it out to be.
It's not, and we need a bit of help as well, Nicky. We need a bit of help from the media. I mean, for me, any Wexford Kilkenny game, we going back to your era, we never failed to deliver. Go to Croke Park and back to the Phil Wilson getting sent off and Wexford coming, and back to you hurling. We never failed to disappoint, to do the business. And I think today that for people at home, for old people that can't make it, it wasn't free to air, and they weren't even allowed to pay for it today. Now don't tell me that's doing a service to hurling in Leinster or in Wexford or in Kilkenny, and I think that's disgraceful. But I do agree, look, at Munster's been a flagship, but they're giving out about Leinster, but they weren't giving out about Leinster hurling when Kilkenny were winning 11 All-Irelands in 16 years. It wasn't the best place to be for other teams that time. So I'm very proud of Leinster hurling. I don't think, and you know yourself, I don't think you would have got a better atmosphere in any stadium in the country than you got out there today. It was phenomenal, wasn't it?
It was a phenomenal own goal by RT today. An absolute, not only it was a disgrace, and I had no problem because I wore a previous hat to say that here publicly. It was terrible. But The reality of it is for Wexford hurling, since '68 and in your own time, you've won 2 All-Irelands. For a great hurling county like Wexford, Tom, it's just not enough, and something has to happen down here to be really, really competitive again.
I think you're right, Nicky, and I think you've hit a very, very good point. We won the game today. Look, if we were to go out against Kilkenny next week, I'm not sure if they were fully going, would we win it? I don't know. But the truth of the matter is, it can't paper over the cracks. So while I probably my overlying feeling at the moment is just pure relief. I'm almost emotional relief that we're still where we want to be hurling. There are issues that we need to sort out over the next winter, over the next 12 months. You were a great visionary when you were over the GA and a great hurling man, and you know that you have to have an overall plan. I think we have a plan in place, but we need to sit down and see where we're going wrong, what we're doing wrong, and try and improve that record. That's probably from about Wednesday onwards, Nicky, because I'll tell you the truth, I am so relieved that we got out of this today. But I think I think that's where we need to go, and maybe you come down and do a director of hurling job with us now for a few years.
I think I'll leave that to you. Look, Tom, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks.
And Nicky, thanks, and it's always a pleasure to hurl against Kilkenny, Nicky.